Okay, so we've created all of our investments. Now we're going to come to our main method and actually start creating instances of the investment so that we can calculate the overall percentage, which is the whole point of this assignment, to come up with an actual risk of our portfolio. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is create our constructor for this class. Public investment assignment. And in our constructor, we're going to first take a scanner. We're going to create an instance of the scanner class. So scanner input equals new scanner. System.in. Okay, and we're going to be using this scanner class just to get the input from the user at runtime. So the first company that we need to create is Alice. Okay, so let's go ahead and create this company. So checklist investment Alice equals new checklist investment. Okay, spelled investment wrong. Oops. And so this is where our scanner class comes into play, because we just want to grab it at runtime and allow the user to enter all the values. So we'll say input.nextInt. It's actually a double. Next double. Input.next double. Input.next and input.next int. Okay, so what did I just do? What we're saying is, when we run the assignment, we're going to grab 4 values from the user input: a double, a string, and an integer. So these 2 doubles just correspond to the score that we got. So in the previous year, it'd be 4 and 7. The string is the actual name, so I guess we can just call it the same thing as what we created the object as. And the last parameter is the integer, which is the percentage of the portfolio. Okay, so similarly, we're going to do that for all of the investments. So the next one is Bob, which is a grade investment. So grade investment Bob equals new grade investment. Okay, so that one is going to have only 3 parameters. It's a string, which is the grade, and then it's the exact same thing as the previous investment, which takes a string for the name of the investment and then an integer for the weight of the portfolio. Okay, so Cindy, it's almost the exact same. So we'll go ahead and create a third, and we'll just change the name to Cindy. David is also a checklist, so it has the same parameter list as Alice. And we'll just rename it to David. And the last 2 are pass-fail investments. So pass-fail investments Eric equals new pass. I'll just copy it. Fail needs to be capitalized. Okay, and what is the parameter list for that? Well, it's just a Boolean, as well as the name and then the weight of the portfolio. So we'll say input dot next boolean input dot next. Oops. Next. And then input dot next int. Okay, and Freddie, our last company, has the exact same parameter list. Okay, so if this seems, again, a little bit convoluted, it'll make a little bit more sense at runtime. But basically what we're going to do is allow the user to fill in these values, which makes sense because, you know, we can just run this project twice and get two different values, one for the previous year and one for the current year, and that way we can properly assess as to whether or not the portfolio got riskier or not. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is actually come up with a final number for the risk. So we'll call it total, say total risk equals 0. And then we're going to add all of these investments into a single sort of list. We're gonna make it easier to loop through all of the investments and return the individual risks. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, we're gonna create an array list. So an array list of type investment, and we'll call it portfolio. And we'll say that's equal to a new array list. Okay, we'll add the import for it. And so you can see it, in reality, it's not quite practical to just create a list with just 6 investments. But we can start to see, I don't know, if we had a SQL database, it would be a lot more complicated and there would be a lot more investments, and that way the object-oriented techniques would be a lot more effective, just because that way we could loop through, we'll say, 1,000 lines of code and return the risk for each one, and it'll give us a nice clean number. But for demonstration purposes, we're only gonna stick with these 6 companies. Okay, so let's continue on. Portfolio.add, and so start off with Alice, and we're just gonna add each one to these portfolios. To this one portfolio. Portfolio.add Cindy. David. Eric. And Freddie. Okay, so now we've created the investments. We've created our list of investments, which we'll call our portfolio. We've added the investments to the portfolio. And now we have to loop through this portfolio and grab the individual risk and then add it to our total, which right now stands at 0. Okay, so we'll create a for each loop, or an enhanced for loop. So we'll say investment, X in portfolio. So this is just telling us for each investment, which we've arbitrarily labeled as X, we want to add to the risk. So risk equals X dot calculated weighted risk, okay? Because we want to take the risk of each investment, right? Because each of these have calculated the risk now. Regardless of what type of investment it is, we've now got it so that it'll loop through, calculate the risk, and then calculate the weighted risk. Okay, because regardless of how we're calculating the risk, in our abstract investment class, we've said, okay, calculate the risk and then get the weight of it, right? Which is just this parameter right here. Okay, so we've calculated the weighted risk for each of the portfolios, or for each of the investments in the portfolio, and then we're going to add it to the total risk. So plus equals risk, not Rick, oops. Okay. And then finally, we're going to come down and just say system.out.print, and we'll give it a new line and we'll say the total risk is, and we'll put in the total risk and add a percentage, and we'll just format this a little bit. We'll put number formatter equals new, and then we're going to create an instance of the decimal format. Okay, we just want to make sure that when we get our final output, it looks a little bit cleaner. Okay, so we'll just add the imports. Alright, so we should be good to go. So in the next video, we'll run the whole thing and finally get our answer to this question as to whether or not we got risky or less risky from year to year.